And I was like about to hit upload on YouTube. And we got an email from South by Southwest being like, hey, you're in. And it's like, don't publish it on YouTube.
That's Freddie Wong and Matt Arnold, who have released their own work online for 2 decades. They almost did the same with their feature, We're All Gonna Die, but it premiered at South by Southwest, and what happened next changed how they're thinking about distributing their next film, Nail House.
I feel it. It feels like there's a shift happening. We can do this ourselves.
Freddie and Matt are deep in the edit of the film, and we're watching a finished scene they shot as a test run for the movie. We're gonna learn how they're thinking about putting it out without a major distributor. Let's check it out. Freddie and Matt, welcome to your own studio.
Yeah, hey. Thank you for having us.
Welcome
Thank you
to
for being
Los
here.
Angeles
Yes.
and our fake restaurant set.
Let's dive into this scene right here.
Yes. I studied harmonica to be able to convincingly pull this gag off.
Cold hands. Kazoo. Know this. Harmonica.
I wanted to let the gag play out because I love that gag so much. When you're mapping out or scripting, how many of these gags are like pre-planned? Are you coming up with any of these gags like in the process of choreography? Talk about like your process for developing some of the gags, because there's so many great
I guess
ones in
both
here.
on that one. I mean, that's definitely. I mean, this sequence is probably 5 pages in the script, but that's because when it gets to the action, it just says like they fight.
They fight.
Which again, I co-wrote this with our friend Will Campos, who's a brilliant writer, and then obviously we co-directed. So like often we can say the action will be figured out because we know we're going to figure out the action.
Right.
But like that harmonica gag is like that's a Will Campos special. That's like his sort of humor. So that was always the way into the scene.
But a lot of times I think it is planned out.
Yeah, we try
Because I
to.
think a lot of it is it's hard to get the supporting material you need if you haven't planned it out beforehand.
Right. Yes. Yeah. The other thing I notice immediately when we jump into this is this incredible set that you're on. We're on an incredible set you guys built here. Tell me a little bit about this set construction and what's going on.
So this one's not a crazy difficult one. It's just a boxcar, and it's meant to be a boxcar in the like traveling hobo tramp. Our fun little pretentious film snob reference is that I'm wearing the clothing from Preston Sturgis's
Sullivan's Travels.
Sullivan's Travels.
Okay, yeah.
So it's the similar thing, and the idea is that just like that movie, interacting with artists, interacting with the common clay. So this was just a big box basically, and it was this side of the warehouse that we're in. So we're in a warehouse, and it's this corner of it was just this giant wooden box.
So even though it's a pretty simple set because it's just a box more or less, even in here when we get to the action, there's a bunch of little things that occurred because of choreographing there, like adding a ladder and the way the latch closes the door for a gag later all came from choreographing within the space.
Well, yeah, let's keep going and we'll talk about some of those as they come out.
Kazoo. Know this. Harmonica. 13th word. 3 syllables. Best.
This guy was great.
Invest.
He was great.
Invest. Investment. I got it. Rockstar chef turned traveling tramp with an imaginary
And
harmonica.
this is green screen.
Not even green screen.
Not even green screen.
So we're in this weird world now where we're like, just a neutral gray is going to
Yeah.
be better,
Yeah.
right? Because there's
It's like a
the thing
30% gray or something.
The thing that you deal with when you have green screen, especially when it's like pretty close, is that you always are working with spill, right?
Yes.
And for this movie, we opted to do mostly blue screen because that way spill starts to key towards like
Daylight,
and
yeah.
daylight, and it's just easier.
Yeah.
And a lot of the reasons why green over blue on the digital side, it's like nowadays with modern codecs and stuff, it's like less of an issue. And this was just a gray wall because we knew that pretty quickly in this fight scene the door gets closed and now we don't have to worry about it anymore. And then if we had painted it green, now it's closed and now you got like a weird green thing coming through. So for this we were just like, no, we'll do that, and we just use Roto, and then we can kind of keep a lot of the edge data.
We also
and be
didn't have a
okay
lot
with
of
that.
space from the wall to the wall, so the cinematographer was actually using that wall to essentially bounce light in anyways. So it just was a gray that it ended up looking like sunlight, and yeah, even this will probably be refined now that we're doing it in the movie.
You just casually said we'll just use Roto. I think like some people might not understand what that implies.
Yeah.
Like,
so I mean, I guess right, like it used to be probably the most arduous, one of the more arduous things in VFX, right? Is to cut out a foreground object from a background object, and like that's, I think, for a lot of people kind of how you start with visual
Yeah.
effects is because
Yeah.
your compositing is just taking two things and putting them together. But like, well, what if it overlaps? And every kid starts off with, oh, here's what we'll do: a split screen.
Yeah.
And then I'm here with my clone. You know.
Guilty.
Yeah. I did that too. I
Pen
was
tool
with my brother.
and finding curves and doing that frame at a time.
So I've spent many hours,
Yeah.
both of us, many hours. Matt rotoscoped on and did all the eyebrows and the original ShotBot eyebrows, which is like a
yes,
little.
that was my job.
That was his job on the.
That's my
VFX
limit
thing.
of special effects is rotoscoping, which is I don't need to do it. It's not a job anymore.
But it's a little bit easier now.
Yeah.
Even just like the built-in roto brush in After Effects is like plenty good, and especially again, it depends on what kind of thing you're doing. We knew here that we're going into what should be outside. It's going to be way brighter. It's going to probably have more of an edge wrap. It's not as clean of like a composite that you need. So it's okay that it has a little bit, the roto doesn't have to be like super perfect comparatively for this kind of shot.
Before we get back to the video, we're throwing a contest with B&H to win a $500 B&H gift card and swag box. To enter, all you need to do is make a piece of art about your favorite movie, a video, painting, comic strip, even a sculpture. If you can make it, it counts. To submit, post it as a clip on Patreon and tag @DigitalSpaghetti, which is a bite-sized public post. You have until September 24th to submit up to 10 different clips, and you need to be a member of our free Patreon to enter. All the details are below. Okay, back to the episode. Let's keep going.
And an incredible investment opportunity.
Yeah! Boxcar film! You and me were like this! Now, I know a game of charades is an unconventional way to open a sales pitch. But what can I say? I'm an unconventional guy. Which is why I've been riding the rails all across this country, searching for the fine flavors that will inspire my new restaurant. Hobu. Chef-driven hobo cuisine. And for just a small amount of seed money, you can be a partner in this lucrative dining enterprise. Now then, who wants to taste
I love
of it?
this. Did that match happen pretty easily, or did it take a little?
Oh, that one was us just like holding it up and being like, all right,
that is in
man.
camera. That it's just sitting there. I'm always a fan of a person mimicking their poster or whatever it is.
The funny thing is that like where VFX start to come in here is that we're doing that gag, but then it's just like little things where it's like, oh, the way that it clears out and the way the rack focus goes
made it weird.
We'll be like, oh, it's actually a little too slow for the, so it's like, so in this one I believe there's like a little tweak of just like, oh yeah, we accelerate the thing out and then rack focus happens just a little bit faster just to sell the back and forth to it, It's a taste of this fine hobu cooking.
I love this bit so much.
Pretentious mulligan stew.
In the context of the film, what role does this clip we're watching play?
Early on, we wanted to test out a lot of the ideas of like how we wanted to shoot action for the whole larger thing. So the way that we approached it was like, all right, let's build a contained action sequence that we can do as a kind of proof of concept. And so we came with the boxcar sequence essentially, which is like not a huge set or anything, but it allowed us to test how many days is it going to take, how much is it going to cost us in terms of crew outlay, how much rehearsal time do we need. And so in doing this sort of like little mini production, we were able to be like, okay, now we know when we actually schedule and budget out the rest of it, we know exactly, okay, what
can we actually do?
Yes.
And if it's going to cost that much, like, can we afford it to, like, how can we,
cut it down if we have to,
et cetera, et cetera. So like this, and most of the crew from this would be in the full movie. So it was everybody. It was like everybody learning the space we're going to film in, the action process, the cinematographer, everybody, like we were kind of creating a style. Like it was very much a proof of concept of how the rest of the movie could look and feel. And then, it was like scouting. It was like, how much is everything going to cost? How long is it going to take? The crew will be 3 times larger and bigger lunches, et cetera, et cetera. And we realized like we don't have enough space in here. So
bigger
lots
lunches.
Of things. Well,
bigger lunches.
I guess more lunches for more people. Everybody, we did need bigger lunches.
We did need bigger lunches. The more people you have, the bigger the lunch has to be, if you think about it.
Now, does this seed money get me common or preferred stock?
Kenny
And
Choi.
here's our villains.
Yes.
Down, Danny.
Ton. Good to see you.
This is something I wanted to ask about. There's this like swinging light through the atmosphere. Tell me about this.
I just said, like, let's just have
That is a light doing this. That is
anything we can do. And that's just a box that's just sitting there. So the two things I said is Harper did this incredible thing where he had like string lights up above, and they would just turn on and off, and they did essentially evoke like a shadow going, because we were talking about doing shadows behind, but we could never really read it, and it does work really well. And then whenever we had this sort of God ray, I was like, so it was just somebody back there just doing this just a little bit. And it's like that plus sound, and then probably in the final version in the theater, we'd add a little shake, a little bit more here and there. But yeah, it does a lot.
And what you're seeing here is that this is like 3 sides. It was the side where the door is, the back, and here, and then this whole wall here is open. And then we had a about half-size wall on wheels that we could roll in to cover that corner.
And then you're creating this atmosphere with like a hazer, I'm assuming?
Hazer.
We love the hazer.
I love the hazer. Sometimes too much.
There was and it was so funny because like you need a pretty, especially because big warehouse space stuff, you need a pretty industrial hazer to be able to get this. But then all the close-up stuff, like when we open it up, and it's all the like, what's it called?
Ninja,
it's like a food photography. Like
it looks like a fake.
It's a fake. That's what it is.
It has like 3 settings. We used it for everything all the time. It's got like steam, like dry ice, and something else. And we just use that. All the dumplings, steam, everything is just this little like vape that we would shoot in front of camera. It's great.
About your money, we're in the middle of.
Nobody takes a loan from the Mafia Kuzayat. Skips
that shadow is the gag.
Okay.
So that was triggerable off of their iPad. They could just hit it and then be able to throw a fake shadow across.
And it does feel like a shadow goes across, but there's no shadow. It's just the light.
The lights turn off.
Dimming essentially slightly.
Did it take a little bit to like dial in, like, okay, that's too much? It
was literally on the day. It was just like, how fast does it feel? And we sit there and we look and be like, about that fast. It feels about that fast.
We just called it the gag. We'd be like, hit the gag. Hit the gag. Why is the gag going? Oh, yeah, sorry. Turn on the gag. Yeah.
Back off, Buster. We ain't afeard of no Asian fusion crime syndicate.
That's right. You mess with one boxcar tramp, you mess with us all.
Ha! You boys really willing to die for this swindler? I bet that stew is made from beans he swiped from you.
How dare you, sir? My beans are right here in mine.
This scene, when you put it up on YouTube, exists within this like 2-hour documentary about the making of this scene. Talk a little bit about like your choice to do that and like documenting the process and how that's a part of your filmmaking.
We love DVD behind the scenes. We've seen all manner of DVD behind the scenes.
I mean, like Lord of the Rings Extended Edition more or less got me into filmmaking. So it's like, do that also. Like if he could do that.
If Peter Jackson can do it, we can take a page out of old Pete's book. So as time has gone on, people have only gotten more interested in the image, the moving image, and all the sort of things that go into it. When we put this documentary out, we're like, I don't want it to be like a press kit where it's like, oh, voiceover, and here's us doing this. No. We told Justin, our behind the scenes videographer, just plant yourself in the middle of stuff and just be surrounded by it, because we over and over throughout the years, people have been like, what's it, they want to know what it's like on set. We did a video years ago that was like a GoPro on the head of one of our PAs for our Hulu show that like got plenty of people like, oh, this was super helpful. I'm about to go to work. And, so we're like, let's show as honestly as possible this process. And I think that there's a greater appreciation than there has been in the past. It's just like, a movie's a movie. But now I think there's so many people who are interested in the process of the movie image and how to get results from it and what they want to do creatively and how they want to express themselves, that I think that I see no downside to being open with your process and learning in that way, because I mean, heck, that's how we learn about yourself too,
Yeah. Okay, I want to know how you did this.
So this is a early gag that we really enjoyed. So this is, the doors wide open, so a clean plate of the door going so that you get the shadow and all that stuff. This is somebody young, and this is my stunt double. Young is with a boxing mitt. Okay. Essentially, as he's going, there's also pads up against where he's going, just slamming his head into.
Yeah, he is just slamming him with the boxing mitt against a black pad there.
Wow.
And then we remove the pad and then do it again, and then we get the door plate. But that is somebody getting their head slammed, because that's the only way it will look okay.
And there's a certain chunkiness to it, and obviously this is also cartoony too, because like a little tiny kick like that is not gonna. And again, talking about tone and what you're setting up and the rules of the physics of this world, right? Like a little back kick like that, enough to move this giant door. And at this pace that it's going.
And his head isn't immediately crushed and he's not dead.
So this particular overlap is because there's a pad here, so that there is an actual impact.
Yeah,
you feel that there's the body does scoot over, and
his feet like go off the ground.
Yeah, I mean that's real. That's just him.
Yeah,
that's just him eating it.
Cameron basically just jumps and then just gets pushed in and then flops.
If there's any like comping, it's just from getting rid of the padding. But like his body he's just doing that. That's just getting smashed his head against 2 pads.
Is this the most ambitious level of like stunt choreography that you've taken on?
Oh, that we've done. Yeah, I mean there's more in the final movie, but I think this is a good rule of. It's okay for it to be cartoony and for us to exaggerate stuff, but like the goal was like we never wanted to like move the bodies with CG or anything.
Okay,
so it's always either wire work or like it's really happening, and then we can like exaggerate it to kind of make the impact harder. But like we want people to be able to watch like people do actual stunts. But I don't think we've done anything as complicated as the stuff we did.
And before this, you made a movie called "We're All Gonna Die."
I don't think anyone expected the end of civilization to be so normal.
That's normal to you?
Oh, it's just pissing, like we do.
Oh, I hate that.
You did like a little theatrical run. You have a Blu-ray that's out. You also published it on YouTube this year. Talk to me a little bit about like distribution, what that has looked like for you, what that was like with that film.
The crazy part about We're All Gonna Die is we had done that as like kind of our get the dust off the gears and go out into the world and shoot something over the pandemic. And we were sitting there and I was like about to hit upload on YouTube because I'm like, well, we're done. Let's have them put it on YouTube. Yeah. And that, because we had submitted to some film festivals, we didn't get into a couple of them. We're like, oh, we're not going to get anything. Whatever, let's go. And I was literally that day ready to go. And we got an email from South by Southwest being like, hey, you're in. And so like, don't post on YouTube, stop. So the plan was to just put it up on YouTube. When we were at South by Southwest, Matt ran into a friend of his from the IGN message boards.
DVD community board. Back when you paid $20 to talk to only parts of IGN. Yeah. This is old, back in college days.
And he was this
I got like a phone call like 4 a.m. just being like, hey, Matt, it's Andrew from the message boards. Like I own 4 theaters and I saw you have a movie here. Do you want to talk? I was like, oh, sure, Andrew. Like, what's up?
So he tuned us into the reality of the theatrical world right now, which was he was like, listen, our problem isn't that. Our problem is that there's not enough movies. We're not getting enough stuff. We're at the beck and call of what the studios put out, which is at their pace, and we have to play by their rules. We would love if we could get other stuff in here. And it's not the multiplex era of the 90s anymore. It's like it's more of a drip feed in terms of what movies are coming out. So
even he told us, he was like, hey, before you put it on YouTube after South by, because we still weren't planning on doing anything with it. In that sense, he was like, let me play it in like a small town in Texas that's like not this sort of market for this movie or anything. Yeah. In my drive-through, I think we were paired up with drive-through theater.
Although Matt,
TikTok's drive-through.
Yeah, drive-through
theater. I think we were paired with Fall Guy. Was the
he did a
stunt,
weird
the stunt movie? Yeah,
Fall Guy.
Yeah.
So he double featured us in his drive.
And it did really well. People were like, he's like, yeah, it had a really good rate. Like people didn't leave during your movie, and he got like whatever good reviews on it. And he's like, just put it in a few places, like try it out. But yeah, he did. He opened up to. We didn't. I guess especially from LA world, you get so used to the idea of like. You see lots of movie theaters. They all have all the movies, and he just assumed the problem is that people aren't going to movies. And then he really opened us up to, maybe so obvious for anybody who's, not in our bubble or whatever. But he's like, my theaters serve a town of, 20,000 people or whatever. They've seen the 4 movies the first weekend. There's nothing left for them to see. Like, I know that there's no kids going on Thursdays in my town because that's when the football game is or whatever it is. So like, I want to put a movie for like, whatever, like a different group of people, 40 to 60 women or whatever, like, but there's no movies there. He's like, we just need more movies in our small towns. And a lot of times, as Freddie was alluding to, studios will, if you want Minions, you gotta put it in another movie and it's got to stay in the theater for 3 weeks no matter what. He's like, well, my whole town's seen this movie. So he was like, just try it. So we kind of, we do a lot of testing. We're All Gonna Die was like a test run of how do theaters work.
So we kind of just started cold emailing theaters, very much kind of, essentially the Markiplier move, essentially, which was like
smaller.
Smaller scale,
but earlier.
Like,
but much smaller.
much smaller. We were just doing some testing.
Inspired by you, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
But there's been a few.
We crawled so we could sprint.
But this is all right in the greater context of I would say Hundreds of Beavers,
Yeah.
which is
Right.
like, there's a different kind of hybridized roadshow, smaller theater approach that can work. But here are the kind of ways you have to go about it.
Yeah.
So because we basically just shot We're All Gonna Die and we just paid for it ourselves, we're like, cool, we can do whatever we want
Yeah.
with it. Yeah, let's go. And so we were just sending theaters the DCP via Dropbox, like the format that they needed, and just like sent them an internet link. And they're like, oh, do you want to encrypt it? We're like, well, I don't care. You're gonna steal it?
We already put it online.
I have waited my entire film career to be able to pull this move.
Ahoy, matey! I'm Freddie Wong, and you're about to watch a pirated copy of We're All Gonna Die.
So it did, I think, 60-some theaters, and what was cool was just being able to play it in a theatrical context, but also being able to do remote Q&As with people.
Yeah.
It was like a selling point to be able to be like, hey, we can zoom in. So I remember like on the weekends we'd be like, Matt would be over, be like, 2 p.m. we gotta go do a Q&A over in the East Coast, and then we got one in Colorado. So it was an eye-opening experience.
Yeah.
It helped us and informed a lot of sort of our approach for if this is the world of what theatrical looks like, we then felt confident that we could do a bigger movie like Nail House, a more theatrically crowd-pleasing kind of movie, and have a shot.
Yeah, with a clear intention of this going in theaters, like in a big way. Like it's a big action movie. We want to put it in theaters. So it was a good experience. I mean, honestly, just like even just creating really like it's things that I feel like you don't really think about. Maybe they talk about in film school now, but like, you like a filmmaker can have a relationship with theater owners. Like you don't have to necessarily go through distribution. Like there's a whole scale of theaters, and like they want to talk to filmmakers and they want to connect directly to you. So like, we went to CinemaCon, which is not a thing that most filmmakers go to do. And it was they're always like, wait, what? You guys are the filmmakers? Why are you here? It's like, well, because we make movies, you play movies. Like, let's talk.
And we said CinemaCon got all the new CinemaCon theater
by the way,
snacks,
yo, hot tips, straight up. CinemaCon's the best convention. They don't tell you this because like, popcorn seasoning, like the convention floor, the convention floor is just nonstop candy and snacks.
Candy.
Dude. Like, you seen there's
different ice cream delivery mechanisms.
Ice cream and ICEE technology, you plebeians won't know for like 4 years. We got to taste the cutting edge.
Try the cutting edge of
you
soft
don't know.
serve cutting edge.
Honestly, it's worth just going there.
And then there's so many like weird Japanese companies that are like the highest end premium home theater seats. And you're like, how much are these? And you sit down, you're like,
7 levels of articulation.
Oh my God, yeah. Anyway, so CinemaCon's a blast. But we also were like, I think the only filmmakers there are probably other, but like we were like,
other filmmakers went there because they would, Sony would do their big presentation and they'd come out and wave like, hi, I'm a famous filmmaker. But like we were probably among the only filmmakers that were going around just to talk to theater owners like on the floor to like hear and figure out like how we can get in and things like that. But it was interesting. Yeah.
That's so cool to hear because that's part of what we're exploring in this series is, creators have figured out how to do so many of the steps in the process of filmmaking. So, now it's just like, what if we also did that last step ourselves of like distributing it and going to theaters?
Yeah.
Like going to CinemaCon is a great tip. Are there any other tips you would have for creators who are wanting to maybe explore this space of how do I get my film into a theater?
At the end of the day, a theater owner is like, can I get anyone to show up for it, right? So having a trailer and having a trailer that even had,
a couple 100,000 views.
Couple 100,000 views on YouTube was like, okay, because it's not like this. They haven't been approached by filmmakers in the past, but having some sort of indicator, Markiplier showed that having people email is important too.
I mean, that mattered to us. Like on a much smaller scale,
well.
like we had people that did not respond to us, and then we get love a lot of these guys. A lot of guys who run these movie theaters, they're older, they've old school, they've been doing it in traditional ways. A lot of them still use like paper, for honestly it's hard to get paid for them sometimes, etc. And like they'll be like, why stop bothering me? And then then they goes like, all right, like 7 of your fans emailed me or whatever. I guess and at the end of the day, like I get, they just want to make sure that a certain number of people will be in the theater, so that it affords the electricity. It's hard to run a theater. They have a really hard job. So anything you can do to convince a theater,
to show that there's real people that will show up, and then it's a lot more impactful rather than some diffuse email campaign being like, yes, I live in the community and this is, I would love to see this theater. Like those types of emails were huge for us.
Yeah,
we had some success with theaters in certain areas that would just run our movie normally. I think in like in New York, for example, Look Cinemas did really well, and like we sold out and they added it for a couple of weeks. We had other places that like they tried to run it normally and like it didn't do anything.
Yeah.
But if the people that just did like a single like eventized show, that is something that you should absolutely be thinking about. Like, I think it's also just rethinking your idea of what a theatrical release is. It doesn't have to be 2,000 screens on one weekend and hope you get it. It can be like, you can roll it out. Again, we had theaters that started in June all the way out to like September, I think was our last screening, because a lot of times theaters they just didn't have time, and they assume you'll say no because movies have a small run. But we'd come back and be like, no, we'll run in September.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. You're at the whim of what else is going on. So obviously you don't want to show up and be like, hey, it's summer and we want to, you're fighting with, Minions and Marvel movies. And even though who knows what the world of, big budget stuff goes, but that's going to be a thing with a giant national marketing campaign. So so there is a little bit of strategy there being like, all right, well, the beginning of the year is kind of where movies kind of get dumped anyway. So like, we can show, literally we were set for even a larger theatrical rollout, but then
in January,
Wicked did so well that they were like, "Oh, a lot of you're still a tiny boat with in the sea against the big studios. So like, you gotta find them cracks and
you're just hanging out. You can't just go where you can. Be flexible and also obviously, but like they're also all hurting because theaters take bigger cuts, especially opening weekends. Like sometimes a big studio, even if it's 50-50 for theater owners, well, maybe opening weekend actually, if it's a Marvel movie or something, maybe it's 80-20 and 80 for the studio. So if you go to a movie theater also and just be like, hey man, like take 70, we'll take 30. Like we don't care. We just want people to see the movie. That might be worth it for them.
Yeah.
Like even if your movie is going to have a lot less seats, they're like, well, honestly, the cuts like better. And like also if they're going to do Q&A and I know their fans are going to come and the Q&A means they're more likely to buy popcorn and soda, which is where they make their money anyway. So like you just want to do what you can to make yourself valuable. It sounds like such a boomer, like
that's very boomer advice from you.
But it's true. Like make yourself valuable.
Walk up there with a handshake and your resume, and
but make yourself valuable to them in any way you can, and that's essentially what happened. Like,
but I think it felt like that door was kind of closed for so long, but we're starting to see increasingly that it is opening up to creators, and like you can potentially get into that space.
Yeah, and I think the scale, start where you can hit your people and go from there, right? Like we had a couple examples even of a theater that would play it, and then it lapsed all the way around where another theater in that town was like, oh, we'll do it too. So we even hit some right. It's just kind of a weird amorphous, non-centralized forewalling. Is more or less what you can do. And then given that, there's going to be certain, I think We're All Going to Die. I love the movie. If I were to sit back and be like, is this a big theater movie, like a horror movie or something like that? I'm like, well, no, not necessarily. So I think also in those contexts, certain genres are going to play better than necessarily other ones.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just awareness of what the game is.
Yeah. Well, we might come back to distribution a little bit later, but let's keep going with this.
All right, we get the punchies.
The bean blood gag. There was just beans under there. You just pull it away. I figured. I looked at this and I was like, I bet that was deceptively difficult.
You had to have cardboard underneath you because it's hard to drag somebody actually.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing we learned in this movie, which is like dragging people, pain in the ass. You need like a drag plate of some kind. But then also like I think I'm holding a bunch of beans and I'm like distributing them as I'm going.
Yeah.
Is there anything that's easier than you might imagine it would be?
No.
Everything's hard.
Because I'll tell you what.
What the closest is just in between. And now I know, but like in between choreo from big beats is one of those things like, you watch, watching like Donnie Yen and SPL or something. And it's like, you got a knife and a baton and they're doing crazy stuff. And then you hear it's like, they have specific beats, but then sometimes the in between, like if the guys are stunt guys or fighters, that part is like improv. They can just do it. So sometimes we'll be like coming up with a scene, like, okay, and then we need like some sequence from here to there. And we should probably spend a day to figure that out. And they'll be like, no, that was a watch. And they'll just like, and they just like kick and punch each other over to the wall. We're like, oh, okay, like that looks good.
Right.
Other than that, everything's harder.
Essentially, what the process comes down to, you shoot the previs for it, and you have an idea of what your angles are and where you're cutting and when you're cutting, and then you're doing your best on the day to get that energy that you're getting. And one of the things that I've noticed is that you can see it get shaved down a little bit. The edges get rounded off, and I see this all the time now because you can see the Instagram reels for some of these like action designers and stunt people, and you see the original previs for a sequence, and then you see how it shows up in the final product. It's always a little bit less dynamic. It's always a little bit like just slower, a little more sluggish. That was something we wanted to like avoid. We want the feeling of the previs. because there is a certain energy and a momentum that you can get when it's just like stunt people just messing around with the camera. And I'm like, that's an energy that you don't see once you get the camera gets bigger and the production gets bigger. It starts to become a lot more difficult to get exactly that thing onto the sensor, right? So this had, a whole sequence where it's okay, we know this is a close up and that's gonna be this and this. And as we're going through it, we're referencing back to the video itself and being like, okay, this is what the feel of it is, and this is how strong we come out of it, and all that.
Cool.
So perfect example. That locking mechanism makes no sense. Hold on one second. This is
really
a box
stupid,
car. You're telling me you can lock a box car from the inside? They use box cars to transport grain. What are they going to lock it on the inside? They couldn't get to the thing on the. So this was a complete fabrication that our production designer came up with because we knew later we want a gag where I get my head and I get kicked up and it throws it up so it's a latch. And it's like this latching mechanism. We looked up like the mechanisms and we're like, they're all on the outside.
And
because that's what they would need for a box car.
And it's just like a cable. It's just like a lock and chain. It's not only that, but like also it was kind of, this gag just came from, it was kind of loose. It was just, again, I think they just kind of threw something together because we're like, I don't know, put something on there. We don't know what it is yet. And then it was so loose that when you slammed it, it closed. And then like that became the gag. Like, oh, that looks great. Like now it looks cool. Like this guy can just be intimidated.
Every take it was balance it and then slam it hard. And then that was Jordan who just slam it and then would automatically go. That's coming from just, oh, hey, it's doing that. Oh, here's how we'll do it.
That's one of those gags that is found in the moment.
Yes, because originally it was supposed to be he closes it and locks
it. And that came because we had the set weeks early and we did choreo in the set and then we could figure that out. If we had planned it in a box car and then shown up, even a couple of days before.
Planned it in a box.
And a couple of days before. And then, we probably wouldn't have this in the next moment. Yeah. And these three guys are all stunt guys and they're all great on camera too. We don't got to hide their faces behind masks. I love all their performances.
Obviously, the water is a special gag, but is there anything else special going on with these boxes, or you just have?
This is
just rigged.
This is just
rigged with packing peanuts and stuff. So actually, this box
is here.
Actually. I'm inside this box.
Two Hudson
with a bug spray. With a bug spray. Literally, I had my two hands like this, so he would punch in the middle, so he'd punch between my two hands, and I was inside there
with pumped up Hudson sprayers.
And then I would just hear it, and then once I heard him go, ah, that's why he screamed. That scream was the primer for my timing. Ah, and then I would just spray at it because we couldn't find any other way to rig a thing that's supposed to be like soda cans in there. It's very stupid.
We had a bunch of gags in terms of like, what is this is more sound design too, which was like, what is in these boxes? And this is the logo and the company plays a role in the larger movie, but it's like, what is what's being transported in there? And so you hear like piano sounds and glass breaking and stuff, and it's kind of a fun thing to be like, oh, what could possibly be in each of these? But for the most part, lot packing peanuts, and also the boxes are way sturdier than you think. So like the corners are very strong. So we would have situations where we'd be like, oh yeah, someone like even just this punching through it was like not as easy as you would expect once it's all taped up.
Also a lot of sanding edges. We sand a lot of the edges of the boxes.
We would take the edges and the corners and punch them against the concrete so that they weren't as like
super sharp.
Yeah.
They were hurting.
Yeah, you're taking some hits into the boxes. I was going to ask how that feels.
Pretty good. Boxes aren't bad. Boxes aren't too bad. And also with all of these, what's nice about that is like I'm wearing a big back pad for any time I have to go into the back. So for the most part, as long as you tuck your chin and you don't whiplash your head back into stuff, you're okay.
You're all right. So you
can actually, by the way, this is a thing we have to fix, but like you can see my pad.
Oh yeah, right there.
There it is.
There's your pad.
Look at that chest pad there.
Leave it in. Easter egg.
Leave it in.
So like this might be an example of where we're dropping some frames and something like that. Am I correct?
Yeah, let's take a look here.
Yeah, probably. So that kick for sure.
So this is a real kick, right? So you can see right here we're speeding up a little bit to get to my face reaction. You're holding, and then boom.
Yeah, there's a jump.
Right there.
Yeah, right there.
Huge jump there, but. And then it's about how fast you can sell this section here.
Yes.
Is the impact, right? Because oftentimes it was one of the things that you realize is that oftentimes a real punch, especially if you've watched boxing or like MMA, you're just like a real punch. Sometimes you're like, whoa, they just hit. It's hard to see sometimes. So a lot of times, especially for film acting and film action, a lot of it is about what is the arc of your arm going across and how big are we exaggerating this punch,
right?
To emphasize it. And then once you have that sort of data across, then you can kind of get into it and be like, let's accelerate through this and get this hit. And that with sound together is essentially that, and then you just do that for every single punch and hit in the movie. And then, by the way, not to say that you're sitting there and sweetening and all that, but you're looking at it and every single time you're just constantly just like looping it, and you're like, I wish this hit a little harder, and you're getting in there and you're tweaking it. And
do you edit with temp sound?
Just for sometimes with just the hits, but oftentimes I find that it's just like without sound at all.
Yeah.
If it works visually, the sound helps it.
Action gets like 10 times better the moment you put sound in.
Right.
Like you can have like a bad action scene and you put like good sound design in, and like all of a sudden it'll be like, oh, it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
It's big explosion.
cool.
Sounds good. So like our for us, we always try to like if our action scene feels like it's playing well and there's no sound yet, then we feel good. So we actually edit with very little. I don't think we do any like temp sound of punches or stuff in it.
No. Punches can throw you off.
Sometimes music if it's a certain like musical cue rhythm or something. But for action, we try not to edit with sound really.
My impulse is often to like get the sounds in there because I want it to feel good soon. But it sounds like you're saying maybe holding off is better in some sense because you're making it as good as possible without the sound.
Because the danger is you can get to a point where the sound is so good and you're like, cool, it works.
Yeah.
But you could have had a better edit without realizing it, you know? So it's like, I think having that has often helped us in terms of getting a good, again, it all just comes down to how's it feel. What does it feel impactful?
And you'll go back and forth. You might put the sound in and realize like, oh, actually, maybe I did a little too much or something because once the sound's in it, you know, so it's a little bit of a back and forth always. Yeah.
I think that applies to creators who even aren't doing action. Sometimes I see these edits and it's like, and there's all these sound effects, and I'm like, you know, that's drawing people in a way. But maybe if maybe you could find a way to play it without 70 clicking sounds.
Yeah, and I think that everyone's process for where they get to that end result is going to be different. And like sometimes I think when we look at our cuts, for example, like we are very sparse in terms of like. And I look at some of the other peers, filmmakers' cuts, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of time. Wow.
That's a lot of video tracks.
It really depends on what you're kind of going for. But I think also, especially with something that is so kinetic, in this way, it helps. I think it helps to be able to not hear it and sort of see it. Just get that it works visually first.
Yeah. There's a little like flash there.
Oh, that's just the gag.
It times so well with
that was just an accident. Happy accident. Sometimes it looks great.
That's the thing about the other thing that we find with action and with sort of the chaos of action and hand to hand is that we got, I think, very fortunate on this movie. There was a lot of little weird accidents like that.
Yeah.
And almost every time it's like, well, we gotta use that take. It's like, there's even things that you would, if you tried to do, you would just never get.
Like somebody pulls somebody away and their like shirt got caught on the open and close sign, and literally like the sign like flips off, and it's like, well, we gotta use that take. Like if we had tried to break that, we would spend like art department would spend like a day trying to like get a fish line, and we would time it, and just like it's perfect. Stuff like that happens.
So all this whole, how am I going to escape? And there's a ladder. That was after we built it. And we're like, okay, you're so confined in this space because it is just like, well, there's only one door out and it's a back and forth, right? There's no depth to it. It is essentially
originally it was a gag where like he tries to run out of the door and like another train is coming and like that train acts like a stop and he like bounces off of it. It felt like really funny when we were talking about it. And then when we were trying to actually like see what it would look like visually, it would always either look stupid or weird. So like we didn't actually really have a way for like the fight to escalate beyond like once they close the door, like how is he going to escape? Just like fiddle around trying to open the door. Nothing felt good with that. And then I think when we were playing around the set, like again, like I think our set designer was like, like we just like had a top thing and he could try to escape up there, and then that came with all these ideas like, oh, we could do these ladder gags, and especially when you're low budget, we try to evoke a lot of scale without having to show it. So later in the moment you'll see like technically the train goes through a tunnel and stops him from escaping. Like we can't show that.
Yeah.
But we can play it close and like there and evoke it. So yeah.
It's just great visual storytelling too. It's like, oh, the goal is up there. He's trying to get from here to there.
By the way, and Matt was very insistent. Matt's like, Matt's up there because he's like, there's a very specific way this needs to rattle because you have to see it.
Pedantic moving. They're like, Matt, you could be directing, looking at the monitor. Like, no, you guys are whacking it too much. I want to just.
Yeah. It's tantalizing.
That's where the subtlety comes from, because initially it was like bang, 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 and you're like, okay, that says something. Yeah. But if it's like that's a different, it's a different feeling,
Is this the?
That's
bro.
Yeah, that's the vape haze or whatever it is.
How are you doing this vomit?
That's coffee and beans.
Every art
department's got their own secret sauce.
It's usually like an oatmeal.
trick.
It's usually like
some
overnight
kind of
oats
oatmeal.
with something because it's easy, it's chunky and gross, and you can hold on.
That one
to.
was gross. That one was a gross one.
Yeah,
it was
you
not
didn't
a
seem to
pleasant
like it.
taste. No.
Not your favorite
It
vomit.
had a salty umami kind of thing, which is what you don't want when it looks like vomit. You know what I mean? Like you want it to be like, oh, it's ice cream.
That's true. Ice cream would be good.
This one was good.
Wait. What's happening? Okay,
So
CG.
there's a behind the scenes he did. Swole was so he's one of the main choreographers.
Okay, so he's brilliant. This guy's crazy. He has been one of the most talented stunt people I've ever had the pleasure to work with. He was like straight up as a kid, they threw him into a Shaolin temple and he did the training, the monk training for
I
him.
remember I asked him, I was like, oh, you was actually like trained as a Shaolin monk? He's like, yeah. I'm like, as a kid, like the whole time, I'm like, how was it? It sucked. He's like, it sucked. I got beat.
He was talking about,
but then he could like.
But he learned how to
no,
spit a cigarette out of his mouth and catch it.
Wouldn't it be funny, Swole? This is the guy. He does it. He's like, so you want me to spit up and catch it? We're like, oh, no. We're going to do it so that like, you spit it up, but then we'll reference it. We'll do a real one, but then we'll, CG the other one. And then he sat there and he's like, and caught it. We're like, what?
Did you try to get it on the day, or were you just like, it's not going to happen?
It was tough because the problem is because it's in the middle of a sequence. It's not just a cutaway. It was like, okay, I'm going to swing a big hook, and we're just like, I don't know how long. It would have been impossible to.
Yeah.
But he does have a real one.
So he has a real one.
So he has a real one. He has a real one. He goes up to do the spit action. He's holding the real one, and then he times it so that he just goes hum, and then it pops up.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you're just erasing it when it's in the air, the one flipping through the air.
So there's one here
and it's getting deleted.
It's getting deleted, and then
that's the real one.
That's the real one. So right there, boom.
Yeah, and then also we can't use fire and stuff in a set and everything,
Yeah.
so all the little embers are fake and whatnot. But yeah.
Wow.
Little elevator sound effect.
Yes.
So here's a perfect example of tone, by the way.
Right.
Originally, we were joking. We're like, what if the gag goes, I'm going. And then I get to a box, and I like quickly open the box, and it's a motorcycle. And then I go, and I start driving the motorcycle through the set. And then they're chasing on foot. And then it cuts to me, and I'm getting a ticket written up by a cop. And the cop is stopping, and I'm like, come on. I'm like, and I go up, get off the motorcycle. And like, that was an example. Or like, too much.
Yeah. Okay.
But then at the same time, we're like, man, we would like a Zucker style type of comedy.
I wish I got too far and then bring it back.
There's a scaled down version of this where you're just infinite,
it's
like
just a
running,
long run.
and that's like just as great.
Yeah. So we just. But also, I was gonna say. I'm sorry, I'm being so pedantic. But even like happy accident thing, I believe this thing landing on your head happened before, because we didn't have this juice box thing. That was Kenny's idea. He wanted to have the juice box during this. But then this shot, when this thing actually lands on your head, was just happened in this one take. Like it actually like lands on his hair. So we're like, oh, well now we have to. So we literally did a pick. We're like, well now we have to do one here where he actually spits it out.
Right.
Because it's like, you can't really prep that. So he just did one and it just like, and we're like, whoa, now we got to match it. We got to have it land on his hair. But this was an early idea for this. Actually, this was from the stunt team, and they're doing a choreo, and they just came up with this, and they kind of took it out at first. Like, this is the funniest thing you guys came up with, like this endless running.
Yes. And how did you do this?
Just a full length
run.
Every take was 2 seconds because it was so like, go, and then we
Two
are,
lenses,
we
tight
are,
lens, wide lens.
We are running so fast into that wall. Like every single take ends with us going, so just whatever.
So just the magic of editing, and just stringing a bunch of takes together.
It's one of the things I love. I think horror, like low budget horror movies and low budget like martial arts movies, have a similar thing. Maybe as young filmmakers, why we like, you know, I think so many people like grow up on those is because you can see the filmmaking in a way that, like, if you're trying to make movies yourself, you can try to replicate it. Like, you can see the wires, like, oh, that's how they did it.
Yeah.
That was the case for us. I mean, we talked about this when we were like when we first met. Was just like all these, you know, old action Hong Kong movies where we loved growing up and renting them from Blockbuster and John Woo and all those, and so many of them they felt accessible because you're like, oh, I think I know how they're doing that. We just need to do it this way, and then you got, you know, like
So I love, and so like in old Doctor Who's, like they would just build one corridor, and then just have them come different directions and shoot different things. It's like I've always been a fan of taking like a small piece of set. Is like, well, editing, you can just make that set forever. Like that's just always fun. It was really fun doing this and just placing boxes and letting them run through it.
And also the way the light.
Oh yeah,
look at that. Is the weirdest.
That is wild.
That is just so thin.
What's behind the slats?
That's
by the way,
it's just a wall. Did you have any like light into? And then there's a high angle to just
they have the lights were on the top of the set hitting the wall because obviously like there's only like a fire lane's length.
Was there anything for like texture back there, or is it's just wall?
Just wall.
It looks so great.
Yeah,
but I think what I love about this is like, again, just my compositing nerd. Like, look at the way the fingers.
Yeah.
Like, there's not in a million years if you went to ILM and they delivered this as the way that your fingers look, you'd be like, that's wrong. Clearly, that's wrong. But it looks so weird.
It's so weird. Yeah. There's no effects on this.
There's no effects on this. But like, look at the way that the cut.
Wild.
I was like, frame by frame. Like, that's cool. That's cool. So what's crazy about that one is he is just running full tilt. There's a pad under. When he gets to the section with the pad, and he's just laying straight back.
This is a CG box we had after the fact.
But like, that's great.
That's and to the fold of the leg. These guys are pros.
Yeah, like
and the crazy thing too is like you would think that like, okay, if someone gets hit and they stop, you wouldn't see their legs. But it's like, no, you do see their legs.
That's crazy.
Because he also still has the momentum.
Yeah, he has no wire. Nobody's pulling him. He just I don't even know how you move your body. I don't know how you sprint and then somehow like flip your body that way.
He just threw his leg up as hard as he could, which
dedication.
is like, one of my favorite stunts in this.
Yeah, that's amazing. Is there anything as creators that you think has like aided you in the process of filmmaking?
Everything. Because when we were doing YouTube stuff, you know, we would show up to a location and we'd be like, all right, let's do an action thing. And we would have like 8 hours to do it.
Yeah.
And we would just do it. And we would try stuff and we would be like, sometimes the stuff worked, but it didn't matter because we're putting out video every week, right?
Yeah.
So the
whole process from beginning, you know, like from beginning, like every aspect of production, you have to at least put your hands on some regard.
So you start to realize you're like, okay, this kind of thing works. And if you're in a pinch, I always joke that we also developed one of the most useless skill sets, which is if we're in a pinch and we have to do an action sequence, we can do it. But then it's like, well, if you're in a pinch and you need to do an action sequence, you kind of messed up somewhere else.
Which is great for indie films, but like that doesn't help it anytime you're pitching to like a studio. It's like, hey, if you guys have like no money and we just need to come up with something, we can do it.
Do it really well.
Like, well, that shouldn't be the case on our set.
Well, we were better than that. So. But like every little aspect, it informs it because it also gives you an immediate, especially because I think we've done such a variety of hand-to-hand and gun combat and sword combat. You know, so like it gives you a vocabulary too that you can be like, okay, this is gonna be this kind of shot or this sort of thing, and you also know that's like, oh, this, if you want to do this, that's gonna take a lot of takes. We gotta make sure that we have the time for this gag or whatever that is. So it helps you in that you're able to see the difficulty of stuff coming in, having that wealth of experience and like whether or not something will work and whether or not something will sell.
Yeah.
Being able to like be like, oh yeah, we did something kind of similar to this back when we did this other short or when we did Video Game High School. It was just, again, all very helpful. Yeah.
Do you think that's scaled up? Like, do you feel like you can do more with the 2.7 million that you have here because like you know how to do more with less? from
Yes,
that.
I think
absolutely.
I think having also.
I think this was a ridiculous movie to try to do for 2.7 billion.
Yeah, we'll let the results speak for itself. Like, right, like you can see plenty of $3 million indies out there, right? Like, we'll stack. We feel very strongly that we're going to stack up against some of these.
If the rest of it is as good as this, I think you're.
I think the thing that's been most useful, at least in our previous movie and this movie and anything we've done on the YouTube side of things, and not to be all lovey-dovey about it, but like honestly, I think like always being co-directors, co-writing, YouTube being very collaborative. I honestly think like that is what has let us like make films the way we make it. And
I think that's what the new generation is keying on.
And I think our sets are, maybe somebody will come out and say we're taskmasters or something, but I like to think like our sets are very collaborative, very friendly, very fun, and I think that's where you get your best work, because like if I could do everything, then I would do everything. But like even if I have opinions about costume, like costume designer who's really good is going to have better ideas. Yeah. And like having people be able to come up with that and feel safe, sharing it, but also having a collaborative process that's willing to be not fearful and go too far or come up with ideas that are too crazy, and then know that everybody then is working to restrain it backwards, but that's not like a negative thing. Like all those things, like is why I love doing this, is why we got together in the first place, making YouTube stuff, and being able to try to find a way to do that on larger stuff was so much of what we want to do with this.
And I think that is a thing that is happening when we look at filmmakers, right? Because when you look at
directors,
the access originally was film schools or like even getting a camera was difficult.
Yeah, and in film schools they separate you out. They'd be like, one person's a director.
Yeah,
at USC
it was very rigid, and then for us growing up, it was always filmmaking has always been collaborative because it's like, well, it's your friend who has a camera, and so they're going to work on it. So you better figure out how to do it because it's their dad's camera, so you got to work with them. And I think there's a reason why you see so many more director duos. Yeah, right. You see Daniels, you see and it's like a big deal. It used to be like a big deal. That's like, oh, the
DJ's still trying to figure it out.
The Coens can't even direct together because of the DGA and all that, right? So it's like, and then the Wachowskis had to fight for that. And then when you look at sort of our generations, everyone's like, everyone's kind of doing a little bit of everything. And it's like, that's just how we came up on it, right? It's a different approach, and I think that's we're starting to see the end results of that kind of creative approach to things.
That collaborativeness, you're talking about like people suggesting the juice box or different things. Is that something that like a certain attitude just naturally sort of provokes, or are you explicitly sort of inviting input?
We do invite input, and I think that like it feels to me like a step back away from auteur theory and this idea of like the singular vision holder has to be sort of this person. And for whatever reason, I feel like our generation is a little bit like, relax. Like it's okay that other people can work on the thing, and I think that it's just a different approach than when you look at sort of classic auteur theory, which I think absolutely falls apart when you look at and you sit on a set and you're like, hold on, everyone here is chiming in. What do you mean? It's like,
who's the editor at the end of a Kurosawa movie, right? It's like good, like won the Masters, but it's like they have their relationships with other collaborators that you may just not see. I think it's just also, and to the point, it's like it's weird because like we're very collaborative, but then we literally are in every step of the way. Like we write, direct, finance, like, and then edit at the end. I think our job's always to, from the first time we're pitching a producer or trying to find any department head to even the first people that come in on set, like I maybe it's just me trying to like convince myself it's a good idea, but like if I can get them excited about it, it probably means it's a better chance the audience will be excited about it, and I'll probably get good work from them too.
So this is very selfish and self-serving.
Ultimately,
so the answer is you must manipulate everybody to the
and
maximum.
We are gods, and it's only our vision in the end. We manipulate an entire group of people.
Be collaborative and kind, but only in service of a good end film. We got to wrap up soon, but there's one stunt that I can't help but ask about that's coming up right here.
By the way, that cloud, way trickier than you think. Because what you need a dense cloud of vape, right?
This
is Matt's genius idea.
A funnel and then you put because I saw this on YouTube with kids doing vape tricks with bubbles, and I have a 7-year-old, and then every once
and she's all over the vape scene.
There's a magic show, and there's always people who do like bubble tricks, and I remember looking at bubble tricks. There's like smoke, and I remember like a guy's doing. Anyways, I saw kids vaping. They were doing cool bubbles with vapes, and they bounced across the lake. And I was like, oh, let's get the vape into a funnel, and then put the funnel in soap, and then we'll just blow a big bubble. That way it's condensed smoke in one spot. So that's what that is. That's a huge bubble of smoke with some VFX.
With some VFX throughout the edges.
And then what would happen is we would poke it, and then he would punch through. So that is like, everybody laughed at me. Nobody believed it.
Nobody believed it. Because he came in and being like, listen, all we need is some soap and water, and we can do this thing. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like, trust me. And we sit there, we watch this giant vape bubble. I'm like, this is the dumbest thing we've ever seen. Like, and be like a perfectly dense cloud. Wow. Okay, all right. Because anytime you try to like do a box and you fill it in, the moment you move the box, you're changing up all the air around.
Very dense smoke.
Wow. So this is another thing that's like seems simple, like such a simple gag, but like way harder.
Also hard to punch the camera when you can't see the camera.
Yeah.
So
because there's a big cloud of vape in front of it. So you'd be like,
Amazing. Okay.
Oh, sorry. I do want to point out one thing. This is one thing that
I said we would never stop talking.
This is something that Young loves. So this is a comp of a real hit. So Young is obsessed because Young was my boxing trainer because I was going to do Creator Clash 3. That's my boxing coach. Vinny was my boxing coach. So we're like, okay, here's what we're going to do. He's like, he's hitting me. See that cheek deformation? That's because he's hitting me with a pad.
So he's really hard with a pad.
Not as hard as but like enough to actually deform, right? So that's a real hit. And then the punch can't just go straight through. The punch is on pad too. So then you combine the two pad hits together, and it's a very convincing punch to the side of the face.
Wow. Amazing.
Don't need a tunnel, just need a dark room. Okay. So that is, in the end, what that was against blue screen, me going,
and I don't remember how the idea, if it was Young or where the idea came from, but we just got obsessed with the idea of him hitting his head on every rung on the way down. And we tried you on top of a table, like bobbing your head. We tried like hitting you with a pad multiple times, comping it. I think it did end up just being like us holding you sideways and him just self-motivating it to a rhythm.
Which is a weird angle, by the way.
Yeah. Because like anything else, if it wasn't perfect, it would be like then his head was going through the bars.
Yeah.
And then that is just a plate, multiple takes of a plate and getting it together. End up, I think looking pretty good. It was really hard to figure out.
We got a couple of passes on that. For
we got
just some lighting passes, but like the feeling.
The feeling's there. That's one too, where probably the sound once you get that in there is helping.
And then our sound designer, who we've been using since the early YouTube days, this guy Kevin Senzaki, who's like absolute goat sound designer. He was like, oh yeah, there's so many little dumb jokes that he throws in there. Like when I get kicked up and brought up, it's like it's an elevator. It's a ding. But then it's like, oh yeah, it's like a xylophone that you hear. It's just like a bunch of really dumb, fun sound gags, which I love.
This has been amazing. I learned so much watching this. I can't wait to see the finished product, hopefully in a theater.
Hopefully.
I'm very excited. If the full film is anywhere as good as this scene, I'll be really happy. So thanks so much, guys, for coming on.
Thanks for talking to us.
Hey guys, that was the second episode in our mini-series about creators putting out their own feature films. There are 2 more conversations on the way with creators who are each bringing their own unique perspective to the table. Joel Haver and Patrick Willems. On top of that, our free Patreon is a place to dive even deeper with live stream events, chat rooms with other creators, and a free downloadable creator guide. We'll catch you right back here for more episodes with your favorite creators. See you then.